Hey guys, Loman02. I want to cover a really sweet deck and matchup of this deck against kind of a bad matchup. So what you have in front of you is a Premodern deck. So the format is Premodern. It's Scourge and earlier Scourge all the way to 4th edition, I want to say. So basically no old school cards and then everything up until the borders changed out in the game of Magic. So what you have in front of you is a Turbo Oath deck. The way this deck runs is against creature decks, it's very board controlling. You can stall and or it can use Oath with an Enlightened Tutor package to find basically two threats. Spike Feeder and Spike Weaver. The idea being that Spike Weaver basically just fogs the entire attack step until you can find your Wrath of God or you can Swords to Plowshares all of their threats. And the Spike Feeder basically just gaining you life or blocking and then gaining you 4 life, right? So that's kind of how the deck runs if it's against a creature or aggressive matchup or even like mid-range. It also has some interesting stuff going on. Because you're running Enlightened Tutor, you're able to run a lot of singleton copies of cards. So I'm only running 2 Oaths right now. I'm also running Zurin Orb and Balance, which is a pretty powerful combo. And Zurin Orb with a Horn of Greed exploration deck tends to be pretty strong. So the deck can go infinite. It has 2 Gaia's Blessings, so if someone does not have Graveyard Disruption, you get rid of the Gaia's Blessings. Eventually you can just Oath. You basically kill your own creatures by sacking them. This thing gains you some life. This thing you pay mana to get rid of it and stop or prevent combat damage. And then once you have 0 Oath targets left, you Oath. If you haven't already hit a Gaia's Blessing goes in the yard. The whole deck gets put back together. You don't get a creature that turn, but ostensibly your deck's back together. And eventually over time you'll just Swords to Plowshares all of their threats. And you'll be drawing bazillion cards because you have 4 Exploration and 3 Horn of Greed, which just allows you to draw, a lot of cards, especially on a 28 land deck. You do have the Balance combo with Zurin Orb, which comes in handy in certain matchups. It's definitely good against creature-based decks, and it's not bad against a lot of other. Like blue decks, it can generally tend to end the game because it's generally an Armageddon. You gain a bunch of life, then you basically get them out, and then just, because you're running 28 lands, which is more than probably almost every other deck in the format, you're able to kind of get back up on it. Also have a Scroll Rack, which allows you to kind of operate as like a Parfait-style combo deck. When you have Horns of Greed in play, you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards. With Exploration, it allows you to play more lands and draw more cards per turn. Vice your opponent, who does get the same benefit from Horn of Greed, which basically just says whenever a player plays a land, they draw a card. Exploration giving you a replacement effect for the ability to play 1 land a turn with being able to play 2 a turn allows you to basically outdraw your opponent. We do have 1 Wrath of God, 1 Balance, and Swords to Plowshares for board control. No counter magic of note, and then 3 Intuition to find whatever pieces we may need. Sometimes you just find lands. So this deck is very good at board control, and it's pretty good against mid-range style decks. Where it's going to tend to struggle is against combination style decks and against extremely hard control style decks. So think mono blue. In the sideboard, we have Sacred Ground, which is basically just a singleton to stop Wastelands, Armageddons, things that blow up lands, basically. Aura of Silence against the more combo-style decks, because this does stop a lot of the combination cards in the format. Aura of Silence does. Light of Day stops certain decks, stops Goblin Crusade, stops Suicide Black. Altogether, not a horrible card. Sphere of Law can just straight up house Sly, red deck win style decks. It's very difficult to beat for them. No Rod, similar to Aura of Silence, except it basically is exclusive to artifacts. Also findable by Enlightened Tutor. Tormod's Crypt stops graveyard-based strategies or mirror matches. Ivory Mask can shut down a lot of decks, and you'll kind of see this card come into play in the matchup I'm going to show you. Morphling, just if you want more beatdown in your matchup. Aura Flux, I probably should replace this in the sideboard. I think it's probably a bit much, but it's good against Enchantress. Chill stops red decks, and Hydroblast stops red decks. So quick pause, guys. This is the deck. It's kind of an interesting pile. It does also have land stills in it, so it can draw a bazillion cards. It has 4 Mistress Factories and 2 Treetop Villages. A playset of Wastelands in it, because a lot of decks are going to be playing multi-killer, lands, or like, Grand Coliseum, Cities of Brass, like we are here. And having access to 4 with the ability to Gaia's Blessing them back can be very, very powerful, especially if someone else is not running the Gaia's Blessing engine to basically cycle their deck. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be right back momentarily with some of the gameplay of this deck against a bad matchup. Alright, guys, back. So, Opening 7, acceptable. So this hand has Enlightened Tutor to find whatever we may need. It's got 2 Horns of Greed that are going to allow us to draw significantly well off the exploration. It also has a bounce land in the Undiscovered Paradise, which is kind of a spicy include to allow us to draw more cards off Horn of Greed. So go ahead and resolve the exploration here and then get a Plains into play. I have no clue what I'm playing against. Right now I'm playing against Cardboard Confrontations, Jordan, or Magic Stronghold. He resolves a Portent. Portent could mean a lot of things, but my guess is it probably means that his deck runs a lot of counter magic in it, because Portent tends to be better in decks that want to be reactive or cast spells on an opposing turn. I end up finding land still here. I just go ahead and play it out, and also play out the Wasteland with Exploration in play. It's possible I want to save the Wasteland, but I really need more lands than this. I go ahead and just let them have the turn back. I'm not going to try to play anything out here like a Horn of Greed or something like that, but I really want to get lands or Standstill down to see if I could force them to pop it. Because I actually do want more mana here. I just go ahead and play my land out. It's possible I didn't want to do that, but because I have Undiscovered Paradise, I'm not really afraid that I'll be able to get value off the Horn of Greed. I draw Wrath of God, which is not looking really good in this matchup, but it is a singleton in my deck. They play on a Sapphire Battalion, and at this point, the jig is up. I'm playing against Trix. If you're not familiar with Trix, the way Trix works is it casts a card called Illusions of Grandeur, which says you gain 20 life, cumulative upkeep 2. When this enchantment leaves the battlefield, lose 20 life. So the way the combo works is they cast Illusions of Grandeur, and then they donate it to their opponent, so that their opponent has to pay a cumulative upkeep of 2, and eventually just dies to it. So at this point, I am going to go ahead and get down a Horn of Greed and try to draw through this. And I believe I go ahead and just get a Standstill down here. The plan is I'm probably going to have to Swords to Plowshares the Treetop Village, but I want to get after more cards at this point. They do go ahead and resolve the Illusions of Grandeur, and they do donate it. I go ahead and pay here. The problem that I'm going to run into here is that I have Cities of Brass. They do have the Arcane Denial. I wanted to get something else countered other than the Swords to Plowshares. But right now I'm pretty sure I'm in a lot of trouble. I get the Scroll Rack down and have to pass it back, discarding the Wrath of God, or correction, Spikeweaver. Probably should have saved Spikeweaver and discarded the Wrath of God, but at this point I'm pretty sure I'm just dead. They go and take a look at my hand, they Portent. It's very likely they're just going to draw any counter magic they can at this point to stop me here. But they have Illusions of Grandeur plus another Donate, which means that I'm basically dead. I believe I conceded at this point and go into Game 2. Quick pause, guys. And just so you're tracking, this is a very difficult matchup, generally speaking, for my deck, because I have no counter magic in deck. I do have a few ways in the sideboard to deal with enchantments, but they're generally on-board answers, so I have to play them out before they resolve. And the turn that they're going to have the least amount of mana is going to be the turn they actually donate the Illusions of Grandeur to me. So my game plan going into Game 2 and into 3 onward is that I'm probably going to have to Swords to Plowshares some of my own manlands or my own threats, or go above 20 life in order to win the game. So quick pause and we'll be right back. Alright guys, we're back. We had a mulligan down to 6 in this game. I see a Wrath of God on top of my deck for the Scry. I go ahead and drop it to the bottom. Keep this hand though. This hand is acceptable. It does want green mana pretty badly to get Exploration online. Then go ahead and play Islands. There you go. I do draw into my forest, which is pretty nice, but I know at this point they're going to have counter magic up. So Wasteland's completely dead. It's a colorless land in this game. So they're representing counter magic here. I do go ahead and Enlighten Tutor looking for a Standstill, if I'm not mistaken. And I throw it into counter magic. I expect it's going to get countered here, but I just need to get them out of my opponent's hand. I do have 2 Swords to Plowshares, which actually are pretty relevant in the matchup, because if I draw into a manland, I can Swords to Plowshares to go above 20 life and stay alive if they manage to get a donation on Illusions of Grandeur off. I do go ahead and I think I debate on finding those. I end up just finding the Enlightened Tutors here instead. Yeah, I debate this for a while. This is actually a tough Intuition. I know I want to resolve Intuition here because I know that they don't have counter magic up. But yeah, I believe eventually after a lot of dancing around and not sure. Actually, no, did I find Standstill? Yeah, I do find Standstill. I find Standstill here. It was either that or Enlightened Tutor, but I think I wanted more Enlightened Tutors in my deck. They play land after accumulated knowledging. They do counter this as well, and now I have only 1 Standstill left in deck. They go ahead and play a Powder Keg out. Powder Keg, not that great against me. I draw the last Standstill in deck, and they Cutting Wish to try to find something here. I believe what they find is Capsize. Capsize is kind of nerve-wracking because Capsize means it's going to be a lot harder for me to Swords to Plowshares my own man land. And Capsize is kind of one of the cards that has me worried because it's going to disable that plan. But I did manage to get a standstill down, which means that when they go for their combo kill, I'm going to at least get to see a lot of cards. But right now, we're just playing Draw Go, and they're probably trying to draw up to more counter magic, and I'm just looking for man lands. I do find an intuition here, which is fine. It's acceptable. In regards to sideboard plan, I basically put in all of the threats I could, and then, I should have taken out Wrath of God. I wish I could have. But my sideboard doesn't have a lot for this matchup, so I put in Ivory Mask, and I also put in, Aura of Silence. So we're just draw going right now, and I'm happy to draw lands here because it's more than likely that they're going to try to pop my lands or stand still at end step. They have an Accumulated Knowledge, which, I could Enlighten Tutor there, but I figure I probably should save it so I can have all of my mana up. They Sapphire Medallion twice, and now with this, they could try to go for an Illusions of Grandeur play, but they don't go for it here. I think what they want to do is just have enough counter magic to counter basically everything I can do. They get to draw here. I just go ahead and resolve the Treetop Village because I know that my line of play is going to involve having to Swords to Plowshares the Treetop in response to this. So they go ahead and Illusions of Grandeur. They go ahead and donate it to me. At this point, I believe I do attempt to activate the Treetop Village and Swords to Plowshares it. They have a 1 counter spell for it. I go ahead and Swords it again, and now they Capsize it. Well, they do not do it with Buyback, which is really big for me. If they had Capsized it with Buyback, the game probably just ends there because they can just bounce the Illusions of Grandeur. What I'm able to do here is... this is interesting. Well, this is actually not what happened in the matchup, but let's see if it corrects itself here, guys. I don't believe this happened, because I believe what actually happens here is... Alright, so they rebuild... I'm pretty sure I found a Zurin Orb here, but let's see. Maybe I found something else. No, I did. I was afraid of counter magic, I think. So I find Zurin Orb, pay for this thing, tapping myself down. This is what I did. Yeah, I played around counter magic on the turn prior because I felt like they probably had it. I get the Zurin Orb. I know because they actually went for a Cunning Wish for Gainsay that they do not have any other counter magic in hand. Or I believe they do not. I go ahead and sacrifice 2 lands here with my Zurin Orb and allow the Illusions of Grandeur to go to the yard and go down to 1 life. At this point, I draw into Ivory Mask, which is a huge pickup for me, and I'm significantly lucky to have found it. Now they cannot use Intuition. They cannot donate to me, because donate targets a player. So Ivory Mask essentially locks up this game. We play the game out for a couple more turns, but eventually I asked Jordan, I'm like, do you have like a Morphling or something? Because if they don't have a way, or if they have another Capsize or a Morphling, basically, because if they don't have a way to bounce the Ivory Mask, they actually just lose the game here, because their method of winning is through a targeted effect on donates. They sleight of hand here. I believe he goes and looks at the deck list at some point here. Yeah, I think he goes to cast Intuition there, but he can't. I end up playing on a Horn of Greed here, say, hey, have the counter if you want to have it. Alright, and he just goes ahead and packs it in there. So we get very lucky this game, but I do think we played in a way that promoted our winning as best we could with an extremely unfavorable matchup, and it was a pretty sick game, in my opinion. Quick pause, guys. We'll be back for the concluding game in the match. Alright, guys, back. Alright, this hand is fine. It has 2 Swords to Plowshares. It has a threat. It's nothing exceptional, but like my deck is not exceptional, and this hand has like less dead cards than some other hands could. It's not very action-packed, but it's certainly not worth throwing back. And Mishra's Factory is a good pickup here because we can animate that and Swords to Plowshares it to go above 20 life, which is pretty strong. I'm a little leery of the Undiscovered Paradise without Horn of Greed and Exploration. They go ahead and Intuition here. I go ahead and do the same. I'm going to have to go down to 18 to do this, but I think I want this to resolve really badly. So I find all Enlightened Tutors here to force them, or to make it desirable for them to leave up counter magic. They find all Illusions, which I think this is one of the areas that like is possibly a player on Jordan's part. I think when he finds all the Illusions, like he's going to need more than possibly 1 to win the game, based on what he knows my deck contains. So one of the ways I really upset this game is by being able to stop the first illusions of grandeur, by being able to out life gain the first illusions of grandeur. So basically plowing this Mishra's Factory. So I go ahead and pass it back, and now is the turn I believe he ends up going for it. So he casts out the illusions of grandeur. I say, okay. He goes ahead and tries to donate it here. I activate and pump up my Mishra's Factory to 4. And then I believe I go ahead and Swords to Plowshares it, expecting that I'm going to get memory lapsed. I do get memory lapsed. And I just tap the other one. I actually want to keep lands in play. I do go ahead and Enlighten Tutor here, finding the Zurin Orb. And I go ahead and go down to 1 and play on a Spike Weaver so I can start beating down on my opponent. Now keep in mind he only has one more Illusions of Grandeur, so it's not likely that he has a lot of ways to win. The relevant cards in his deck at this point are Illusions of Grandeur, Donate, and Capsize. Capsize would also be very problematic for us here. Play on a Horn of Greed, just get counterspelled. I'm going to run my stuff into counter magic at this point because I want to get it out of Jordan's hand, so I can resolve relevant stuff later on. Draw another STP. It's not likely that I'm going to be able to gain enough life to make it relevant. I have to make a lot of land drops to do that. Exploration would go a long ways in helping me there, but right now I'm just beating down for all it's worth. I go ahead and get the Treetop Village on board. I don't really want to be bouncing more lands. I could have left up Intuition here, but it's pretty likely that his hand contains a lot of counter magic. I go ahead and get in with an attack here. I actually don't play the standstill or the standstill out because I don't want to bounce my Undiscovered Paradise, and I really don't want to go down lower on life. But I do play it out here and get countered. Attack for 5 here. Could have attacked with the Treetop Village as well. And actually, I think it turns out that I probably should have over the course of this game. But I wanted to leave up access to Intuition just in case. Jordan goes ahead and Intuitions me and finds Donate just to get another half of the combo. But I don't feel horrible about this. He's on 33 cards. There's 2 relevant cards in his deck that I know of at a minimum. Draw to a Coastal Tower here. Go ahead and get the Coastal Tower down. At this point, I believe I fire them all up. Yeah, I just fire everything up. Because I want to end the game. This is a significant amount of damage. 8 damage here. So, 3-turn clock. So he's got basically three draw steps. At this point, there's not going to be any way that I can, I think, gain more life than another Illusions would do to me. So I'm just hammering away at his life total here. Go ahead and get in for 8 more, down to 3. Let's do the math real fast. If I Swords to Plowshares, a Treetop Village, plus a Spike Weaver, and then sack the rest of my lands, I actually may be able to do that. That's 6 plus... Yeah, it's pretty close. I just go ahead and play this out to see if he's got a counterspell in hand of some sort, and he does. He shows me a counterspell. I fire up the Treetop Village and say, hey, have Capsize or lose the game. And manage to get there. He taps out to scare me out. But, anyways, very, very cool game. So, I think this matchup was really interesting. And in the second game and in this game, I think we had to find some really cool lines to actually win. I often find that Trix has issues in this format, and I'm not sure if there's like a good blue-red version. I think the mono-blue version kind of struggles, though. But we got to find some pretty cool lines in this matchup that I kind of wanted to share with you guys because I think it's interesting to see this matchup. From the standpoint that I do not think the deck I'm playing is favored. It runs no counter magic, and in retrospect, it may not be correct. Maybe I need to run 3 absorbs and a couple counter spells in the deck, or maybe a couple mana leaks and a few absorbs in the list to help kind of flesh it out. But it is going to disrupt the engine of my deck as well if I do that because they're more deadweight cards, right? But anyways, very, very, very cool game against Jordan of Cardboard Confrontation here. Had a great time playing him, man. And I hope you guys all enjoy this pre-modern content on this cool Turbo Oath deck is what I call it. It's basically just Turbo Land Oath versus Trix. Kind of an old school Type 2, even Type 1 deck that was Necro-powered for a while and is certainly a very powerful deck. I don't know how well it transcribes over into this format. I think Trix kind of struggles, but it is a very cool old deck. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the content on the Premodern format, and if it's a format that interests you, I hope you guys get into it at some point in time. Like I said, it's all old border cards, so Scourge back to 4th edition, and you get to play some, crappy old creatures. I guess Morphling's not too crappy, and some cool old engine cards like Zur and Orb and Balance, and, good old removal like Swords to Plowshares. All right, guys, enjoy, and take care now.